Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get straight to the insights you need. Today, we're plunging into an address just packed with some really bold declarations. We're talking promises of a golden age for America. There's also talk of a big, beautiful bill aimed at reshaping the economy and, well, a renewed fight for what they're calling the American dream. Our mission today is simple. Unpack these significant statements, give you a clear, direct understanding of the administration's message, in their own words. Our source material, it comes straight from a transcript of a White House YouTube video. It features Vice President JD Vance and Secretary of Labor Chavez-Dimmer. Their remarks really zero in on economic policies, their specific approach to workforce development, and also their stance on public safety. We'll look at the key claims, the policy specifics, and the philosophies underneath it all. Okay, let's begin by unpacking that economic vision. Secretary Chavez-Dimmer starts things off painting this really vivid picture of a golden age of America. Yeah. And she claims this is happening now, just 9 months into the administration. What kind of economic snapshot is she actually presenting? What metrics are they using for such a, strong claim?
Yeah, it's aggressive framing, definitely. What's highlighted here is this idea of immediate, tangible economic success. Secretary Chavez-Dimmer states that America First policies, and that's generally about, prioritizing domestic industries and jobs, have created hundreds of thousands of private sector jobs. And she makes a point of saying this job growth has been entirely among native-born Americans. That's a very specific demographic focus.
Entirely among native-born Americans, okay.
Right. And beyond jobs, she also claims working-class wages are up, GDP growth has smashed expectations, and she mentions nearly $8 trillion in private investments since Inauguration Day. Oh. The suggestion is that this investment will bring, quote, mortgage-paying jobs back to the United States. And this is all presented, connecting the dots as a direct result of President Trump being a master negotiator aiming to restore the U.S. as the world's manufacturing superpower. Mm-hmm. So the core insight here is really this narrative of rapid, very focused economic recovery, all tied to their specific policy approach.
That is quite an aggressive set of metrics, especially so early on. You highlighted the phrasing entirely among native-born Americans. Why that specific emphasis, do you think? What's the message there for the listener?
Well, it seems quite deliberate, doesn't it? It aligns pretty directly with that America First rhetoric we talked about. It suggests the economic benefits, especially the jobs, are meant for and are exclusively going to citizens born here. You could interpret that as addressing concerns maybe about immigration or globalized labor. It seems aimed at reassuring a certain part of the public that policy is focused squarely on their interests. It draws a pretty clear line, around who they see as the beneficiaries of this golden age.
Right, a very targeted message. Okay, moving on then. Another really critical piece of their platform, and both speakers hit this hard, is something called the Working Family Tax Cut. Secretary Chavez-Dimmer uses some strong language, big, beautiful bill, even one of the most pro-worker bills in modern history. What are the specifics they're highlighting? How do they claim this actually impacts families and the economy?
Yeah, they give it significant weight, and it does make you look closer at the stated impact. The source material is explicit. Mm-hmm. The bill delivered no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, and no tax on Social Security. Now, just for clarity for everyone listening, income from overtime and tips, that's typically taxable income federally and often at the state level, and Social Security benefits can be taxed depending on your total income. So removing those taxes, that would be a noticeable change for some people.
A tangible difference, potentially.
Exactly. And Secretary Chavez-Dimmer claims that because of this, working-class families can expect to see an average of $10,000 more in take-home pay. She adds, speaking as a mom and grandmother, that this kind of money can be life-changing.
$10,000 average, that's a big number.
It is. And Vice President Vance then builds on that. He says these cuts aren't just about individual tax relief. They're also designed, he says, to reward companies for building and investing in the United States of America instead of, quote, shipping our jobs off to Asia or Mexico. Plus, he brings up an increase to the child tax credit. The idea there is making it easier for young families to grow new life into this world and to raise that new life in security and prosperity and comfort.
Yeah.
So all these pieces together, they frame it as maybe the most important part to restarting the American dream. The overarching idea seems to be this multi-pronged thing. Immediate cash relief for certain families, plus incentives for businesses to stay domestic, all under this banner of restoring prosperity.
Okay, so just to simplify it, maybe it sounds like specific tax changes targeting take-home pay, especially for certain earners, and also pushing companies to invest here. Reducing the tax burden in specific areas. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that captures that dual focus quite well. It's direct financial relief, targeted relief, alongside a broader strategy to, keep manufacturing and investment within the U.S. The administration is basically presenting it as a clear signal to workers and to businesses about where their priorities are.
Okay, so we have these bold economic claims, big tax cuts aiming to boost income, boost domestic investment, a grand vision for prosperity. But how does this link to the skills needed, the pathways for this new workforce? Secretary Chavez-Dimmer made that really pointed statement, didn't she, about education. America won't be forged in the halls of these woke universities. It will be built by the hands of our skilled workers. And she links this philosophy to the late Charlie Kirk. Can you elaborate on that vision for workforce development? What's the role of education in their view?
Sure. Digging into the details there, you see a really clear emphasis on technical education, on alternative pathways to careers. And it's explicitly framed, often in opposition to traditional four-year degrees, especially in certain fields. The Department of Labor, according to the transcript, is very excited about expanding Pell Grants specifically for technical education. The goal, to help attract future tradesmen and women to the job market.
Expanding Pell Grants for technical ed.
Okay, right. And this thinking is reinforced by that quote they attributed Charlie Kirk. We need more electricians and less sociology majors. It's very direct. So the administration says it's actively working to honor Kirk's legacy by expanding apprenticeships, big time. Since January, the DOL has apparently registered over 180,000 new apprentices and launched nearly 1,800 new registered apprenticeship programs nationally. And the stated goal, the big target from President Trump, is 1 million active apprentices across the country.
1 million active apprentices.
Yeah. It's presented as providing young people with a real alternative pathway to success beyond a four-year degree. It signals a pretty significant shift in emphasis for federal education and labor policy. The key insight seems to be this strategic pivot away from what they term woke universities, a term often used to criticize institutions seen as too progressive, and towards a much more robust system for vocational and trade skills. And they're explicitly tying it to that specific ideological lineage, to Charlie Kirk.
It definitely sounds like Kirk is a strong ideological touchstone for this workforce vision, but Vice President Vance, he spends quite a bit of time talking about Kirk beyond just education ideas, right? His broader political impact, his personal legacy. How does Vance describe Kirk's role in the administration's overall success, and what legacy beyond the workforce stuff does he want to honor?
Yeah, stepping back, the narrative Vance builds around Kirk is multifaceted. He calls him an exceptionally talented individual, someone who was integral and important. He even credits Kirk with helping staff the administration with, quote, solid, smart, kind, and decent people, like Secretary Chavez-Dimmer herself.
Interesting connection there.
Very much so. And Vance explicitly credits Kirk's organization, TPUSA, Turning Point USA, with having created a movement. He claims his movement shifted the youth vote in 2024 from Democrat to Republican. And he directly links that shift to Trump winning the presidency and himself becoming vice president.
So a direct line drawn from TPUSA's work to their election.
According to Vance, yes. He highlights Kirk's belief in free speech and conservative values and mentions his tendency to talk to anybody, believing the most important political virtue was just get out there and talk to our fellow Americans. The vice president then mourns Kirk's recent assassination, stating firmly, we reject political violence, and vowing they will keep on debating ideas in his honor. He also emphasizes how TPUSA offered young conservatives a sense of home and purpose, often places they felt were very hostile. He describes it as becoming an organization of patriots dedicated to making this country the very best country that it could be. So the insight here is really how Kirk's legacy is being used. It's not just for policy ideas like workforce development, but also as like a foundational figure for their political success and maybe a symbol of resilience against opposition.
That certainly paints Kirk as a really central figure, ideologically and maybe strategically, for this administration. Okay, so beyond the economy and workforce, Vice President Vance also pivots to public safety. He says part of making this country work for you all is making sure you're safe in your communities and safe in your streets. What specific actions, what policies does he talk about here? How is he framing their commitment to safety?
Well, this brings up their approach to domestic security, which, based on the transcript, sounds quite direct, maybe even forceful. The president is credited with sending the National Guard to take back American streets. They cite actions in Memphis as an example. And Vance mentions offering to send the Guard to Detroit if Michigan's Governor Whitmer asks, citing the city's serious crime problems. So it indicates a real willingness to use federal resources for local crime.
Federal intervention in local crime.
Seems to be the message. And furthermore, Vance details some aggressive efforts against fentanyl and other drugs brought in by cartels. He shares this anecdote about the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, reporting that drug boats have, quote, completely stopped after the military lit up a narco-terrorist boat. That term, narco-terrorist boat, usually refers to vessels involved in drug trafficking, especially if linked to groups using violence.
Lit up. That's strong language for military action.
It is. And Vance, drawing on his own background as a Marine in Iraq, says he's proud to have a president who is sending our military to light up the cartels that threaten our people in our own backyard. He explicitly states he believes that's where the military belongs, if anywhere. He claims a government dedicated to the national good can make the country safer, protect jobs, ensure wages, and stop this terrible poison from coming into our country.
So the key takeaway seems to be this portrayal of public safety as a top-down, assertive federal job, even using military assets for what they describe as domestic threats from organized crime. Okay, so we're hearing about deploying the National Guard domestically, military action against cartels, all framed as a very robust protective stance for Americans. All right, finally, to wrap things up, Vice President Vance connects all these policy points back to a really powerful personal story. He talks about his own Rust Belt roots, lays out this vision for the American dream. What's the core message he wants listeners to walk away with from his story and the administration's whole agenda?
Yeah, if we connect all these threads, Vance's closing is deeply personal. And it really frames their work as this battle to restore something lost. It's a clear call to action. He talks about growing up in Middletown, Ohio, a place where he says the American dream seemed to be disappearing, factories closing, jobs being shipped overseas. And he directly blames bad leadership. Leaders who, in his words, chose crime, shift your jobs overseas, and refuse to stop the cartels.
So linking past decline to specific leadership failures.
Exactly. And then he positions this administration's actions, fighting for auto workers, prioritizing safety, ensuring good wages, wise spending, low taxes, etc. He frames all that as fulfilling a sacred promise and our sacred duty to make things better for the next generation. Then his remarks pivot hard, presenting a really stark choice for voters looking ahead to 2026. He frames it as a choice between, say, those who tried to fight for the illegal aliens versus somebody who tried to fight against the drug cartels, or between those who demonize our cops versus those who want good law enforcement officers to be able to do their job.
Very clear contrast being drawn there.
Extremely clear. And between politicians who shift your jobs overseas versus politicians who fought to keep good American jobs right here at home. He really hammers the point that the American dream belongs to American citizens, explicitly stating it does not belong to illegal aliens, drug cartels, and foreign workers. So the core insight is this very personalized narrative that blends economic, social security policies into one single fight, a fight to reclaim a very specific vision of the American dream, specifically for citizens, and implicitly defining who belongs in that dream.
So we've just taken a pretty deep dive into an address that really laid out a comprehensive vision, a golden age for America. It includes specific tax cuts, aimed at take-home pay and domestic investment, a whole revamped approach to workforce development focusing on skilled trades, and a very strong, assertive stance on public safety and border security. This deep dive, we hope, has given you a direct look at the key messages, the policy priorities coming from this administration, straight from the words of its leaders. Hopefully it helps you understand the narrative they're shaping around economic opportunity, national security, and the future of the American workforce. So here's something for you to maybe mull over. After hearing all these remarks about rebuilding the American dream, particularly for young people, for specific groups, what elements of this particular vision resonate most with you? And maybe what questions does it spark about the future pathways to success and even identity in our country?
The most dangerous place maybe this Ohio State grad visited was Michigan on the campaign trail, but you all were always kind and friendly and good to me. We love you too. Thank you, sir. It's good to see you again, man. I'm not going to do that here. Somebody yelled out OH. I'm not doing that here. Don't insult your hosts is the basic thing that I learned in politics. Let me just say a few things, a few words of gratitude. First of all, you guys are lucky to have a great congressman who fights for working people in the state of Michigan. Tom Barrett, where are you, Tom? Thank you so much for what you do. We talk a lot about the working families' tax cuts. We talk about no taxes on overtime, which we are proud to deliver, no taxes on tips, which we are proud to deliver, the lowest taxes that we've had in this country in a very long time, because Tom Barrett went to Washington and fought for the people of this district. Thank you so much, Tom, for everything that you do. I want to thank, of course, the leadership of this great American manufacturer. Hatch was founded in 1952 by two brothers. Where are we at here? Where's the leadership of Hatch at? Thank you, guys. Stand up. Come on. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, guys. I got a little tour with Daniel Craig and Wally earlier today. Thank you guys so much. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, Wally. I don't want to insult you or look like an idiot in front of the TV cameras, but you guys, this is a great facility. So it started, of course, manufacturing parts for M1 rifles for the American warfighter, and now it manufactures all kinds of automotive components that we rely on each and every single day. And one of the things they told me is that business got maybe a little tough, a little uncertain when they had a president of the United States who was obsessed with telling everybody to drive an electric vehicle, because too many of those electric vehicle components were not made in America. But now that we are leaning in to great American-made automobiles, Hatch is doing better, the American auto worker is doing better, and President Trump and I are proud to fight for you each and every single day. I've also got to thank our incredible Secretary of Labor. You just heard from her, Secretary Chavez-Dimmer. Let's get a round of applause for the great Secretary of Labor. Now, she is a very, very interesting person. She has got a great career. She had a great career in Congress, but I have never met anybody on either the Republican Party or the Democrat Party who is more obsessed with fighting for American workers every single day. She wants our workers to have the best training. She wants our workers to have the best benefits. She wants our workers to have the highest wages. And thanks to her work, we're getting closer every single day to being the most pro-worker administration in the history of the United States of America. So thank you, Madam Secretary. We also have Michigan GOP Chair Jim Runstad. Where's Jim at? Jim, thank you for everything that you're doing. Now, Jim did such a good job during the last election in 2024 that the previous GOP chair, Pete Heckstra, is now our ambassador to Canada. So if you do a really good job, man, you might just get a promotion. Who knows? But he's doing a great job here in Michigan, and we're going to fight with him for the next couple of years to make sure that we're electing candidates who actually serve the interests of Michiganders and serve the interests of the American worker, and that's what we're here for, and we'll never forget it. So I want to say just one thing about my friend Charlie Kirk. I want to talk about Charlie Kirk for a little bit. And the last group I want to have be recognized here is we have got a lot of kids, and I hate to call you kids, but when you're 41 years old, you guys are kids. TPUSA is a great organization founded by my friend Charlie Kirk that takes the message of free speech and conservative values all over our college campuses here in the state of Michigan and elsewhere. And we've got some proud TPUSA folks here. Would you guys stand up and be recognized by the crowd? We love you. We love these kids, and we love the organization that was founded by Charlie Kirk. And I know I speak for all of the kids behind me, all of the great TPS USA members, and also the alums, that over the past 10 years, Turning Point USA has not just been an organization, it has been the fountain of a movement. all across the United States of America. If you look at just the youth vote in 2024 and how much young voters shifted from Democrat to Republican from 2020 to 2024, Charlie Kirk created a movement. And that movement made Donald J. Trump the President of the United States, and it made me the Vice President of the United States. I would not be here without Charlie. But Charlie was an exceptionally talented individual. People don't realize how integral he was, how important Charlie Kirk was. He helped us staff the administration with solid people like Secretary Chavez-Dimmer. He made sure that when we hired somebody, that it was a smart person, but it was also a kind and decent person. You see him at these college events and he would talk to anybody. He didn't care if you were a Democrat, a Republican, a liberal, a conservative, if you supported the Trump administration or not. He felt that the most important American political virtue was to just get out there and talk to our fellow Americans. And I hate to say that a week ago, he was doing what he did best, he was doing what he loved, and an assassin gunned him down for daring to say things that that assassin thought were wrong or shouldn't be said. Well, I think I speak for every person in this room, and I think I speak for a majority of our fellow Americans when I say we do not attack or commit violence against people because we disagree with their ideas. We debate ideas, and we're going to keep on debating them in honor of the great Charlie Kirk for as long as I have a microphone. But the last thing I want to say about Charlie, my friends, is he was more than a political organizer, more than a person who literally helped make me the Vice President of the United States. And I'll never forget it, Charlie, that I would not be here were it not for you. He was a good guy. He was a good friend. I mean, all of these people who have been involved in TPUSA, you know, Turning Point USA, it wasn't just a debate society. It wasn't just a political organization. It gave these kids a sense of home and a sense of purpose in often very hostile places. If you were a young conservative or you were a young Christian and you were worried that a professor might give you a bad grade for being who you were, Charlie's Turning Point USA gave you a home. If you were worried that you had an idea that was maybe disfavored by your social group, if you were worried that you believed something that was just a little too controversial for a college campus, Turning Point USA gave you a home, it gave you friends, it gave you moral support, and that is what I think must live on in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. I have friends who met a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, who met the best man at their wedding at Turning Points USA because it was an organization of patriots dedicated to making this country the very best country that it could be. And I would like to think that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, this basic idea of young people gathering to discuss and debate, that is the thing that we cannot let pass away just because the leader of Turning Points USA was gunned down by an assassin. And I want to let you know that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whatever your belief is, I will fight for your right to speak your mind. We reject political violence and we reject the crazy left-wing radicals that gunned down our friend Charlie Kirk. Let's talk to one another and not try to shoot each other down for disagreeing. You know, one of the things that Charlie worked on very, very hard was the very bill that we're going to talk about today. I remember having so many phone conversations, so many text conversations with Charlie about how to make the bill better, about how to do more for working families. Because you know what, Charlie, he believed exactly what I believed and exactly what the President of the United States believed, that we have got to rebuild the American dream, especially for our young people, which is why this big, beautiful bill does so much to bring American manufacturing back to the United States of America. These working families tax cuts, they don't just cut your taxes, though they certainly do. They reward companies for building and investing in the United States of America. Because isn't it nice to have an administration that is fighting for the businesses and the workers that are building right here at home rather than shipping our jobs off to Asia or Mexico? We fought for no taxes on overtime and no taxes on tips because we want you to keep more of your hard-earned money. We fought for an increase to the child tax credit because we want to make it easier for young families to bring new life into this world and to raise that new life in security and prosperity and comfort. The Working Families Tax Cut is not just a big 1,000-page bill. It is an important part, maybe the most important part, to restarting the American dream in this country. Wouldn't it be nice to have a president, and now we do, who builds in America rather than rewards companies for shipping jobs overseas? Wouldn't it be nice to have an administration that actually gives you more of your hard-earned money rather than taking more of it for hard-earned or for government bureaucrats? Wouldn't it be nice to have an administration that fights for your ability to keep more money in your pocket? Wouldn't it be nice to have an administration that punishes corporations that ship our jobs overseas, but rewards businesses for building right here in the great state of Michigan? That is what we promised to do, and that is what we're doing every single day. Now, I don't know if you saw the headlines this morning, if you turned on the TV this morning, but the president right now is participating in a great state visit to the United Kingdom, our closest ally, of course, going back to the very beginning of our country when we didn't always agree very early on. But pretty much since then, they've been very close friends of the United States, about 200 years, our most important ally in the world. And the president is over there, and somebody asked me, would you rather be in England celebrating the state visit? I said, no, I'd rather be right here in the great state of Michigan where people are grilled and great products for the American people. So with all due respect to our great president and all due respect to the King of England, I am so proud to be right here where I am today, with all of you talking about all of the ways in which we can continue to build an America that works for normal Americans again. And that means a lot of things. Part of making this country work for you all is making sure you're safe in your communities and safe in your streets. And one of the proudest things the President of the United States has done in Washington, D.C. and in Memphis as of a couple of days ago is to send the National Guard to take back American streets. We deserve to be safe in our communities again, and that's what the President is making happen. And it's so funny, you go to these places and, you know, the TV cameras, very often the fake news media, all due respect to the fake news, we love them, even when we don't. They show up in these places and they put a microphone or a camera in front of somebody who they assume is a Democratic voter, and they say, what do you think about Donald Trump deploying these people to your city? And every single person says, it's a great idea. I just want to be safe, and we're glad the president is making that happen. So my one message to Governor Gretchen Whitmer here in the state of Michigan is, oh, come on. My one message to Gretchen Whitmer is, look, the city of Detroit we know has got some serious crime problems, and we know that it's the people in Detroit who suffer the most when crime is allowed to run rampant all over city streets. Gretchen, we are happy to send the National Guard to Detroit, Michigan. All you got to do is ask. We got to remember, the streets are safer when law enforcement is allowed to put the bad guys away. And just as we want to protect your job and we want to make sure you have a good wage when you work hard, we also want to make sure when you go home, you can enjoy your neighborhood and enjoy your community in safety. You know what else we want to do? We want to make sure that our young people stop dying of this terrible poison, this fentanyl and other drugs that are being brought in by these cartels. And I'll tell you a little story. I was talking to our great Secretary of Defense probably about a week and a half ago. And this was right after we lit up a narco-terrorist boat that was trying to bring drugs into the United States of America. And I got to tell you, I am a child of the war on terrorism era. I served, just as Tom did, in our military. I deployed to Iraq. as a United States Marine, a young enlisted United States Marine, I am proud to have a president who is sending our military to light up the cartels that threaten our people in our own backyard. That's where the military belongs, if they belong anywhere. So I was talking to I said Secretary of Defense, but our new Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. And I was talking to Secretary Hegseth, and you know what he said? He said, you know what, Mr. Vice President? We don't see any of these drug boats coming into our country. They've completely stopped. And I said, I know why. I would stop too. Hell, I wouldn't go fishing right now in that area of the world. But that is what a military that is dedicated to its purpose and a commander-in-chief that is dedicated to the national good can do. If we just have our actual government fighting for the interests of Americans and nobody else, we can make this country safer, we can protect your jobs, we can make sure you've got the best wages anywhere in the world, and we can stop this terrible poison from coming into our country. We just needed a president who was willing to fight for you, and now we've got one. So let me leave you with this final thought here. Look, I grew up in a community, you heard Secretary Chavez-Dimmer mention this, that I grew up in a community where the American dream seemed to be disappearing, where the jobs were getting shipped overseas, where the factories were closing down. I remember driving around my hometown of Middletown, Ohio, and we'd see some abandoned factory, and my grandfather would tell me what used to happen there, what good jobs used to happen there, what good wages used to provide for families there. And I remember thinking, why is it like this? Why have our leaders ignored us for so long? Why are factories closing instead of opening up? Why are good jobs going to China when American workers deserve good jobs right here at home? And the answer was bad leadership. Just as our leadership chose crime, they also chose to ship your jobs overseas. Just as they chose to send our young men and women to foreign wars all over the world, they refused to stop the cartels that were operating right here in our backyard. And I believe our sacred promise and our sacred duty is to make this country even better for the next generation than it was for the generation that came before. That is why we're doing the things that we're doing. But I want to tell you, I'm never going to forget where I came from. I am never going to forget that I was a little boy who was worried about why the jobs were disappearing. I'm never going to stop fighting for the auto workers to have good jobs right here at home. I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to stop, and neither is the President of the United States, from fighting for your public safety, for your good wages. We're going to fight for when you send $1 to Washington, D.C., that we spend it wisely. We're going to fight for you to have low taxes. If you're working hard, we're going to fight for you to keep as much of your hard-earned money as possible. Because I believe that the American dream belongs to American citizens, not to illegal aliens, not to drug cartels, and it doesn't belong to foreign workers. It belongs to workers right here in the state of Michigan. So I hope you remember, when you're voting in 2026, you have a choice between somebody who tried to fight for the illegal aliens and somebody who tried to fight against the drug cartels. You've got a choice between somebody who is trying to get good law enforcement officers to be able to do their job and those who demonized our cops and demonized our National Guardsmen. You've got a choice between politicians who shipped your jobs overseas and politicians who fought to keep good American jobs right here at home. Ladies and gentlemen, in November of 2026, we are going to have to make a choice. Let's make it for America, for our workers, and for our families. God bless you all, and thank you for having me.